the YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel. I haven't shared it with leaders there. Me right now hitting the button to turn it off. Anyway, so good morning. I love to see all these faces here coming to learn and have straight discussions in a safe place. You know, there's so many things that happen to us as we age, and they didn't create a manual, and no one taught you these things, because a lot of the things we talk about here are sometimes a little taboo. You know, it brings up a lot of emotions, but this is a safe space where we can have those conversations. And most of you know me, Trek, all of you know me. You know why I do this. I went through some very difficult times, my own family, you know, selling property in that situation. I was treated like a transaction. I did not care for that. So when I got to Florida, I got my license with the intent of helping people. Except at that time, I didn't know what that meant. And as I've grown and matured, I'm getting more clear in my mission, and that is to help people make powerful decisions about their own life going forward. And that includes things like, what do you want to do with your house? And what are you going to do with your estate? What do you want to do with your health? All of that, you know, there's a lot to it. So every month we have a new topic, and we talk about those decisions. Now, today's topic, it's really sexy. End of life decisions. And we've had Lakita here before. We talked about some of this. We, you know, these are things we need to talk about. And I'm really sad to see that our friend Jean is not here, because she, you know, losing her daughter has deeply touched her, and we've all lost people. And so we're going to talk about that today. Anyways, enough about me. I have a great panel today. We were going to have someone from Pastas. We're going to do that in December, whole different topic. But we have three lovely ladies here. I want them to introduce themselves to you and get our conversation started. So, Ida, like to start?
Hello, my name is Lakita Weissong. I work with Dignity Memorial, which, if you're not familiar with what Dignity is a nationwide network of funeral homes and cemeteries. I'm assuming most of you folks live right in this area. So the more local location for you would be Howard Claudebaum Funeral Home, which is right across the street on US 1. So we have about 23 locations in the Treasure Coast area.
Good morning. My name is Ruth DeMico. I am a freedom and care pastor. I have spent the last 40 years in ministry, and one of the things that I do is help people like Christ, which is preparing for end of life and then walking alongside of the family after. And when people have died, I had a question and want us to answer it now.
Well, no, we'll get to the questions. Yeah. And then Virginia. I'm Virginia Shire. I am leading Ruth and our Boynton Beach campus, but there's same offered at all of the Christ Fellowship campuses. It's a grief share for grieving. We've lost a loved one. It is a 13-week Bible-based program, and it's exciting to watch, you know, when people come in and they're so confused and hurt and lost. And over the 13 weeks, we see them coming back to Hotopian, coming back to having a vision for the rest of their life. So it's a very rewarding for Grant. Good. And so these ladies, we all go to church together. So I thought the church has been very impactful in my life, and I didn't even know I needed it until I had it. And it just has changed how I look at everything. It's changed why I'm here to talk to you too. So it's something that was not something I was aspiring to. It was not, I never had any interest at all. But somebody had a different idea. So here I am doing what I do now for you. Okay, so planning. Who likes to plan? You do?
Wow.
No? Jim does, because Jim is always here on top. So we all know, like I said, who sits there at the dinner table says, hey, I know I'm planning on dying. We're going to die. Like, right? Is that how the conversation goes? No. But we all know families wait too long to talk about death. And I'm just curious, Lakita, if you could give us some insight on, from your vantage point, like, why do people, like, what are they waiting to be? Or did that come to you? Did you get people in the pre-plan to come like, hey, I want to buy my plot?
So just to give you a little background, so I've done this for 22 years. So, you know, when she was making a joke that this is not the sexiest conversation, I'm not sure of the exact word, but hey, it's flat again. But I have people that will say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And as soon as you say it, they take like 2 steps back. Right? It's like I'm depleting. If they touch me or talk to me, it's going to happen to them. But my entire job with this company is to be out in the public and preach prearrangements, which is taking care of whatever you can in advance, right? Putting decisions down in paper, alerting your family members of what it is that you want, and just kind of making that plan to protect yourself and your loved ones. We do educational seminars, probably about 20 plus I do a month in my territory. So this is my job, right? Is to explain this to people. And you will have people that will willingly come and sit in front of us and listen to the entire presentation. They will understand, they will say, that makes a lot of sense. And then when you sit down with them, things will come up, right? Well, I just don't know if we're ready yet. I had last month, I had an 86-year-old that had been to probably, that I can remember, 5 of my presentations over the last maybe 2 years. And this last time I said to him, I said, "Oh, you're here again." I said, "You just must love listening to me speak." And he goes, "Oh, I get the invitation." He goes, "And I just think I'm going to learn something different." And I said, "At what point do you think that you're going to be ready to do something?" And he goes, "I'm only 86. It is just not time." And I jokingly said that. I said, "Fan." I said, he has, very optimistic viewpoint, right? That it's not going to happen. Or when it does happen, it's down the road. So I don't have to worry about it. So I think most people don't want to have this conversation because just of what is this, right? No one wants to talk about it. I don't necessarily like to talk about it when it comes to my family or my friends either. I just am a little bit more realist because it's where I do for a living and I've seen so many aspects of it. So I just always encourage your family, whatever the hang up is, it's important to have the conversation, because if you don't have it, one of your family members is either going to sit with someone like these ladies, right? Because they're going to lean on someone else to try to figure it out, or they're going to lean on a family member. It could be just fun. They could all work out. Or Sean went through, it could be a complete disaster. So I just always encourage families. It's a hard conversation. It is an emotional conversation, but it is so much better if you have it in advance, right? So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, it is mutual. And so, Pastor Ruth, you said that you get people sometimes that come to you with a diagnosis. And what is the conversation like when you start to plan? I mean, is there
Absolutely. So we just meet with the family, find out where they're at, and then just walk alongside of what they're asking. But again, agree 100% with people that we come alongside of. It's important, and a lot of times I coach families to say how I did it with my own mom is because my dad passed when I was 8 years old. But with my mom, when I knew that it was getting to that point, I said, "Mom, let's have this conversation one time. Let's get it done." Because I'm sandwiched between 2 brothers, and I said, it's gonna be hard enough for us. And then I was doing her service, so at that layer of um heaviness on it. So we had that one conversation, got everything done, communicated it, and that way when we stepped into it, and that's what I share with the families, your families can process the grief versus having to make those hard decisions because like you just said, no one wants to really face their mortality, but we have to face it, and it's a whole lot easier when you do it once, done, and then your loved ones. Because I too just had a conversation 2 months ago with a couple. He had beaten cancer and it came back. So he had the mindset is I'm going to beat it again. And his wife is like, that's not what the doctors are saying. Hospice has been called in. And I went to the house to have a conversation, and he started to have it. And then when she walked in the room, he stopped. And I get that because, they don't want to have that hard conversation with a spouse because of you don't want to upset them, especially uh, you men are wonderful. You want to protect your wives. But on the flip side, Virginia will share with you the after effect. I just had a conversation with a woman who years that her husband treated her so well, he did all of the bills. He even pumped her gas. And after the service, she had me over to her house, and she just, and this is a very educated, professional woman. And she invited me to her house. I went over her house, sat down across the table, and she just lost it. She said, "Pastor Ruth, I have not had to pump my gas in 20 years." She said, and she said, "I found a piece of paper that has passwords going every direction on it." And she said the very first thing she went to try to do the password didn't work. And she said, I sat at the table and cried. And she said, he has everything coming out of the checking account and I have to figure it out. So please, I agree with you. Have that one time hard conversation. And if you have a blended family, do your family, do your spouse a favor, communicate because it brings it into another layer when you have them.
What about you, Virginia? What do you think some of the greatest fears are that people have when they come to you, or what are the issues they're dealing with in a grief share group? Regret, always.
No matter how close the relationship, no matter if there were issues in the relationship, no matter how present you were, there's always, I could have done more. I should have done more. I wish I had. And I'm just to, if you're speaking with people that, let them know you did the best you could at that time. Because that will beat people up so much that, you can't go back and change it. In my own life, my husband passed at 52, and he was diagnosed and passed in 17 days. Obviously, at 52, you don't expect, you think maybe a heart attack or something like that, but he had, no medical stairgates involved. He had nothing, so we had to do everything like ASAP, and it's hard when nothing's been arranged and you're dealing with the shock and all of that. It's a good thing to be prepared.
Yeah, I have a lady right now for the same thing. Her husband of 30 years did everything. She didn't even know how to pay the HOA when he died. She didn't know anything, and that took a lot out for it. She's a professional woman. She a very smart woman, knew exactly what she's doing, but she's like, I did my thing and he did his, and it didn't occur to them to come together. So today, one of your homework assignments is get that together and make sure everybody knows what is on the right page, where are the passwords, all that. I was just telling Nikita, like, I have a sheet at home. Do you ever came and found it? I think do, but I can't remember that stuff. So that your spouse can help take care of that. So waiting to have the conversations, there could be consequences to that, right? So when families delay planning, pressure's going to land on their loved one. And you guys are talking about some of the things we've seen. And like Lakita, why don't you tell us the benefit of pre-planning?
Okay. So the main benefit, right, is having the conversation now. And, to go to someone, if someone falls ill, it's a lot harder to have that conversation because you don't want to say it out loud that might not make it, right? You do want your spouse to think, I can do this. Everything's going to be fine. But in that moment, everyone panics and says, well, now we got to talk. Now we have to talk about that, right? And which you don't want to say that out loud because you don't want to let him or her know that you're thinking and that's the possibility. So that's a hard part. But doing it now, I always say that you should do it when you are happy and you are healthy. That's our slogan. And the reason why we say that is because you're able to have an open conversation and it's not this cloud looming over the other person going, well, I don't know if you're going to make it. So we got to really have this conversation now. When you have it and you're happy and you're healthy, you can sit down and you can just be very honest and open. I want to be cremated. I'm a veteran. I would like to use a national cemetery. I want to be traditionally buried. And I've always loved, the cemetery off of Okeechobee Boulevard. All these conversations are able to be had and you can literally put every decision in writing. You can pick if you want your place of religion to be involved. You can document as much as you want about that, and I'm sure all of our clergy friends, which that we deal with, appreciate that because so much of it, if you are religious, falls on them, right? Because we look for that for guidance and, they'll get that phone call late at night. She's going to pass any day. I need your help. Walk me through this. How does it work? So again, you can put all that in writing. If you're not religious oriented, but you want to document, how your service is going to be. And it could be the most elaborate service down to the most minimal. But the point is that you planned it and you chose it. And then there's financial aspects to it, right? The sooner that you pay for something, just like, how many do you live in North Longwood? How long have you, who's lived here more than 20 years? Okay. So what you pay for your condo or your house, right? To what these individuals moving down here now are paid for. It's the same thing. You got hopefully a steal. Might not have thought it was a steal 20 years ago, but now look, I'm back. Like, thank God I own my home. But it's the same thing. You plan for it, you pay for it, and you lock in earlier prices, right? And you protect yourself from future inflation. And then you also protect the family, that financial burden in the end, and then to go on, I'm not sure if what she meant by regret is the same thing, but we have a lot of families that don't have a plan in place, and they come in, they're grief stricken. Maybe it's taken the whole individual a while to pass away and they're just drained. And they come to us in this bog. They don't know what to do. They make a decision, right? And then we talk to them maybe weeks or months later. We always do checkups. Then we'll hear the same thing. I don't even remember picking out the casket, or I don't even remember doing this, or I don't. And you have some people that will wildly overscript because of that feeling, like, well, we never had the conversation. I don't know what to do, so I'm going to give her or him the best I can possibly do. And that's lovely and it's very nice to do, but sometimes it's not necessary. Or you have the flip side where there isn't enough money for it. And you have that situation where the family really wants to do something for a loved one, but they can't afford it at that moment. So, by doing it in advance, you alleviate the emotional and the financial side of it. In my opinion, it takes care of everything.
Yeah, help save your families from thinking you need a gold-plated casket, okay?
Yeah,
Because
you do. That's wonderful.
yeah, that's great.
Not everyone wants that.
Yeah, some people will want that, but you might not need it. So the same question for you, Pastor, is so there's emotional and spirituality to planning. You kind of describe what that, but
I sure can say absolutely, but I first want to say, Nikita, I would love to.
Yeah. I think that's one I came up with that. Yeah. It's not technically a company slogan, but it's.
but that's why we are available here. We're having these conversations now. So I tell Paul all the time, like, figure out what you're doing now. Make decisions of how you want it to go if something happens. Because if crisis happens, and if Dr. Jeff is there, like, you're not going home, broke your hip or whatever, you want your plan that you've already made. Now we enact the plan because you're in control. I want to keep you guys in control. That's the whole reason we're doing this.
And I will be transparent. I just made my own plans. I'm 61, and I was in visiting family in New Jersey in September, and I thought, let me just do this because both my parents are gone. My older brother's gone, and my younger brother's 5 years younger. And I thought, let me just do this because I plan to be buried up there. So I went and had everything, and they're connecting actually with you all to send me up there in that time. And I'm healthy, I'm happy, but yeah, I'm taking care of it. But I agree with what you says, because in those last hours, your spouse is under such stress. And bigger than that, when they have to walk away from you, when they're being told your spouse only has hours to live, you need to go start making arrangements. They're walking away from your bedside to go deal with business, and they're looking at like a time clock. And then after their spouse passes, and as a pastor, I have to sit with them, and they're angry because they're like, I could have spent 3 more hours with him, but I had to go deal with this because I would not have that conversation.
That's like, even when we say it and we know it, we have to still do it. And so how is that? Because I'm just sitting here after you said you've made yours. I'm like, ooh, I don't have any. Like, I don't even know what I want to do. Like, but does it? I lost plan.
And it's kind of like with my younger brother, again, 5 years younger, when I had the conversation with him, and that's what he said. He said, well, if you make a choice, are you claustrophobic or are you going to be further? And God says, well, you're not going to feel either one, but please make your decision. Oh, he did. So what do you, I know it's here.
It's so easy to have that talk about her. See, now I'm like processing myself. Like, oh, boys. Okay, Omika. Well,
I just want to make a comment. I did take advantage of your services. And I had a free meat plotted funeral plan and all that.
Yeah.
And I would just say that it's just one thing that you don't have to worry about, and you don't have to worry your children about, because then it's going to be enough for them. Yes, with all the other things. So that's this one thing. It cleared my mind of that. So just want everybody to know how I felt about it.
thank you. Yeah. And that's also a piece of what we're doing. You know, while we're here, we can control the things we can control. Let's get everything set up so that we can just be in our legacy mode. how is my family going to remember me? How do I get to spend time with them? How my grandkids, like, we don't need to worry about that stuff anymore. Let's leave the mundane in the past and let's focus on our legacy and just do what we do. Cause maybe we're just going to drop, if we're so lucky and not have. So Virginia, how do you, when you have people come for free share, do you see a difference between those who had planned or haven't planned, or have you ever met anyone who's planned?
Yeah. I've got every scenario over the years. The hardest, two things. There are a lot of people in my group that lost loved ones during COVID, and they weren't allowed to be by their bedside. And that not having that closure is just extremely hard. And then I've noticed that the older that the spouse is, there's a possibility I could be with someone else for another 35 years. But when you're 80, you don't have that way of thinking. And so for those people, they're like, I'm going to be alone forever. I'm going to live. And it's very devastating, to think that I'm going to be alone. I wanted to piggyback off of what Jen said. When my husband passed, like I said, it was not expected. It's out of nowhere and very quick. And I have 4 sons and 4 daughters-in-law. And there was a lot of heated discussion of what we should do, what we shouldn't do. And I had all of them sit down and give their opinion and their advice. But ultimately, the decision was mine. And that caused some challenges. So, obviously, if we had had warning and had things in place, that would not have been a problem. But, one child wants to be in charge, and one is like, Mom, whatever you want to do. And one is like, we're not going to spend that much money. And it would have just been so much easier that it all fit in the right.
And I think that it goes back to what Lakiva was saying, is that you're sitting in there, you're grief stricken, there's no plan in place, and now your emotions are making those decisions. Whereas you could be a little more practical and coherent if you were planning it ahead. Like, I don't need the gold plated cat. I might want the jewel encrusted one, but I'm going to go in the I think that it's just a little easier to make decisions when you have your full presence and not under total stress. So what, from each of your perspective now, what is something that you wish I'm not even going to say older adults, because younger people are dying now too, but what should they know? What's something they should have in their wheelhouse, in their line, that can make a huge difference in their life, from each of your perspectives? Can we go first?
Yeah. Okay. So this is not even what I do for a living. In fact, she asked earlier for planners. I'm a huge planner. I think I always was a planner, but my husband, when we met, he's a real planner, and we have everything planned. But I always advocate that you should have as much in writing and as much put down and decided upon that you possibly can. Like you mentioned the healthcare area. If you've not gone through that, which we're going through right now as a family member, you just think, oh, I'm their husband or I'm their wife. I have full power to say everything. You don't necessarily. And then also it's the same thing with, if there's end of life decisions that have to be made because of care, all those things, a will. I'm sure most of you have a will. All those things that we think about, like, oh, we'll get to it someday. We'll make that decision someday. And then God forbid it happens and that decision isn't made. It changes everything. So a living trust set up for my kids. I have insurance, but I have everything you can imagine. God forbid I pass away tomorrow. I think my husband and I got it figured out and everything is taken care of. But I meet people on a daily basis that are in their 70s and their 80s, and they say, well, do you have a reference, or do you have a referral for a lawyer? Because I've never set up a will, or I've never set up a trust, or I've never set up a living will or a healthcare surrogate. And I always think to myself, you have to get your head out of the sand. You have to have this conversation now and make it, just knowing that it's there and done. Because if you do become incapacitated, it's over. The decisions can't be made anymore. And your loved one they're going to have their hands tied in all different ways, financially, health decisions, homes, all those stuff. So I'm a huge, huge, huge advocate for planning. So whether it's you're planning your funeral, your cremation, your cemetery, but just planning your life and getting as much in writing as it possibly can long in advance. And, she was saying some of these children come in at the last minute and they're like, well, dad told me this, or when mom was passing away, she told me she wanted this, and all those things. It's like a will. If you sit down and we plan for a will, in my opinion, you should probably tell everybody what's in the will, right? My daughter's going to get this, my son's going to get that, so that it's not a huge surprise or secret at the end. And then people are like, what? Why, how come you got that? What did you tell mom, last Christmas? And by that, again, it's letting people know. We had a Christmas one year where we sat around at my in-laws. They have a bunch of art that they have inherited from their parents. And we jokingly went around and put stickers on the back of the art, my sister-in-law and my husband and her husband. And we said, who was going to get it? But we did it together. There's a little hostility in some of the pieces, but to say like, we're just going to get this out of the way because I had this one piece of art for a long time. But again, there doesn't need to be a surprise. This isn't Days of Our Lives where they read the will and everyone goes, oh my gosh, all the money got left to the child that no one knew existed. Just get it out there. Say what we're doing and let the kids know, dad and I or whoever, we sat down, this is what we want. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but just know when the time comes, everything's in place. And then go on and live a happy, wonderful life.
And Thanksgiving is coming. Yes, you can have those Post-its and be like, okay, what do you want? Because remember, we talked about that in my favorite thought.
Yeah.
And I brought Jeff up because she touched on something, that healthcare surrogate. I want him to just give you a little taste of what happens if you're in the ER and you're incapacitated, and what's that going to look like.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you. I'm at
He's the ER.
Road, and I'll be leaving from here to go work at the ER, and it'll happen today. It happens every single shift I work. Somebody has a stroke, somebody has something happen to them that's severe, and there's no the spouse or family or somebody that you communicate with. Now they can't speak for themselves, and we're seeing younger people now. I just had one in their 40s last week, and they can't talk. They can't express themselves. Nobody knew what to do. We bring in case management, but, to try to help with the hospitalization or what to do while they're in the hospital. And now the family has to scramble. And this is, I went through it when my son died, 23, and didn't expect it. It was an accident. And all of a sudden, now I'm driving to Gainesville, where he was in college, and had to go to a funeral home there, to find a funeral home here. It set everything up. It was very challenging. And I see this every single shift at the hospital, every single one. Somebody comes in, now they're critical, they're back out of the ICU, and families calling from up north, from different places, and asking me what to do. So, and the nurses what to do. So definitely.
And the life-saving measure.
Yeah.
That's a really important conversation to add into again. And make sure it's known, because guess what? If you roll in and you don't know, what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
what's happened recently too. It does. It happens quite frequently. The paramedics, unless there is a form that says do not resuscitate, we're going to do everything. And then I've had family members who's come in upset because now their dad or mom is on a ventilator and never wanted it, but that wasn't known. So that kind of stuff needs to be known, because we want to do what's in the best interest for the family, what the patient had wanted. We want to honor that, and it's more dignified and it's very helpful. So, and this happens. Somebody rolls in, and now they're in extremis, and we have to make life or death decision right then, and it's tough. It's better to have that conversation. Or
So we had those sheets. Remember, we have our medical wish sheet that we either have on our fridge or in our freezer. Does everybody have one of those? If you don't, I'll get you one. The file of life. Remember, we've given those out. If you don't have it, I have some. Huh? And you put all the information on it. And so if something happens and the paramedics come into your house, they know to look on the refrigerator or in the freezer for your baggie that has that in it, and they will take that with it. And if he gets that, now he knows what to do.
and we know family members to call,
Yep.
who their primary doctor is.
Good. So I have those, and I'll get it to you if you don't have. It's really helpful. So we're off topic now, but thank you. So now back to, what was our question? What's the one? What Pastor Ruth, what do you wish seniors knew in planning?
How much easier? On the Kita hit it 100%, Jeff hit it 100%. I always look at it on the spiritual side because that's what so many times doing funerals that you cannot sit at a service, and I'm sure you all can vouch to it, that you're sitting at, a loved one or a friend's funeral. It makes you stop and think of, and so when you would ask, what is one question that I would ask? I would say, my question, again, coming from the past, to let you know that when you take your last right here, that isn't the end of your life because you step into eternity. And God is so gracious, whatever your religion is, He doesn't make that for us. He gives us that choice. There is a heaven, there is a hell, but we get that choice in making them. And so many times sitting with family members and like Jack's like, you have a child, in that aspect, that isn't a normal situation. So you add that compound of grief upon it is the fact to know that, when you make that decision, I would also say get right with your relationship with God and your family so that if you can leave this earth, you read peace and your family will have that.
Virginia, what is something that you think that they should know to help them?
Well, I want to share a interesting kind of fun story. My mother had severe dementia. She was at end of her, and my brother, who has lived in Japan for 40 years, came to visit, and he and I had not seen each other for like 30 years. The past, well, yeah, half of it. But when he arrived, our mother had no idea who he was, no idea whatsoever. And on the second day, I believe it was, she goes, "How did your hair get so gray?" He goes, "Well, one of my mama 60." She goes, "That's not possible. You can be older than your mother." I thought him. And then, then she started realizing who he was. But literally, he and his wife and son were on their way out the door to leave, and they would fly back to Japan. And she said, "Before you go, we need to have a conversation with the two of you here." And so he came and sat back down, and she laid out exactly what she wanted to happen. I mean, here's a woman in late dementia. She couldn't have told you what you had for lunch, but she knew exactly what she wanted, and it lined up exactly with her will and medical surrogate and all of that. And her mind was very clear to explain what she wanted, which was such a blessing for him and myself because we hadn't really had a close relationship for 30 years. Or not it was probably just we weren't raised together. But it made her memorial and funeral so much easier because obviously if we didn't know what she wanted, no telling what she would have ended up with.
Great stories.
Yeah. I've had that, I didn't know. We had unexpected. I didn't know. So they got what I did to them. There was nothing together. So I hope I did right. Let's say. So this is something that interesting. We kind of touched on in the beginning, like, do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? Like, I instantly went to like, you can become compost for a tree or so. I mean, so what are some of these?
Have you seen creative ways and do you help facilitate these alternative things that people might want? Yes. So in all of our cemeteries, we offer a functional style burial, and we say that that means casket and burial, whether it's in an above ground community mausoleum or traditionally in the ground. And then if cremation is your choice, there are still both those options, but then there are a couple additional items or options that are available because of the flexibility, because of the size of the urn. There are statues that families are building. There are granite benches that will hold multiple sets of urns.
Oh, wow.
There's our cemetery in Chiquesta. It's called Riverside Memorial Park. The family that originally owned the Lighthouse Diner, that's a human family. They built a beautiful bench, and it's made out of this really pretty blue, dark blue granite. But then it has an exact replica of the Jupiter lighthouse that comes off of the bench. And inside the lighthouse is it's poured out for 4 urns for the family, and then the bench, I believe, holds an additional 6. Yes, that might not be your cup of tea, but for them, that was their thing. The Lighthouse Diner, the Jupiter Lighthouse, Turquesta, that's the perfect way that they could think to memorialize their family. So with cremation, you have a little bit more flexibility with that. But then also our company runs the Neptune Memorial Reef, which is the largest man-made reef off the coast of Key Biscayne. So what we did was we built, it's like a replica of the lost city of Atlantis. And then as people pass away, their cremated remains are put into what we call a reef ball, and it attaches to the reef, and it's continuing to grow the reef larger and larger. So even if you don't want your ashes physically placed on the reef, you can do a scattering, or some family members will purchase like a memorial plaque, because people do dive it all the time. There's a beautiful National Geographic on it, but you can Google it and all that, but it's giving life after life. So that's a little bit more unique as opposed to being in a specific cemetery. And then if there's veterans or spouses of veterans here, you have the option for a national cemetery, which is a wonderful option that you are entitled to, because everything in the national cemetery is at no cost for our veterans. The veteran would still need a licensed funeral home, because they're going to need to have funeral services or cremation services. And then there are options to plant trees within the cemeteries. I have always tell our families, everybody selects their final resting place differently, right? We take people on tours of these cemeteries multiple times a day. Some families want to be in the highest level of the mausoleum because they make jokes that they never had a penthouse. Other families want to be where someone can physically walk up and touch the mausoleum. We call that heart level, because you can physically touch it. There are others that want to be under beautiful shaded oak trees. There's others that want to face a different way. You have to decide what that is for yourself. And I think, just in our mind, if we weren't in the cemetery, or if we're sitting at a kitchen table and we thought, gosh, how does this look for me? But when you go through the cemetery, you kind of see all the names, you see what the family did, you can see if it works multiple family members together, and it kind of helps you envision what's best for you. Because ultimately, it's your decision, right? It's your final wishes. It's your legacy that you're leaving on. And then I always tell our families this. We hear so often, why would I do that? Why would I spend all this money to go into a cemetery when I pass? No one's ever going to. I've worked in the company for 22 years. Riverside is a wonderful example of this. Riverside's first burial was 1905. There's a pioneer section that the Pinnocks, the Dubois, all the founding families of Jupiter Westa still own property in. And on a daily basis, we have family members, or not family members, but people come to our cemeteries, all of our cemeteries, and they'll have a list of names, and they'll say, we'll show them, we'll take them out, we'll show them all the graves. And sometimes it's their family members. Sometimes it's famous people. Sometimes it's historians coming to learn about, the 2 sheriffs that passed away, in an armed robbery in the 30s. Whatever it is, someone is coming to the cemetery and they want to see that grave. So whether it's your great-great-grandchild that you might not ever meet, unfortunately, right? But they know that grandpa or great-great-grandpa's buried at Riverside. People come all the time to look. So, and to pay their respects in different ways. We have historians that take tours in these cemeteries, and they take people on tours and explain to them, the legacy of the Pinnocks and all the other families that are around. And it's just a great testament that, you can think back to the early 1900s, these people that thought it was important to do that. They got themselves a final resting place. And now in the year 2025, people are still going and wanting to see it and wanting to read the words of endearment, or, sometimes there's more than that. So it's just, there's lots of things to do. There's lots of options, and there's something for everyone. Even if that means your urn goes home and sits on a mantle, it's important for you to make that decision and let them know what to do.
And you are important and you matter. And so let's think about it. It's hard to think about ourselves sometimes. I'm an expert at that. But we do deserve that. So, okay, moving on. So I want to talk about, from you ladies, when family support is limited, what kind of things are available to help? Because I know a lot of us here, we're snowbirds, but we don't have children. So what kind of support? Great question.
There's a lot of community activities. I know at Price Fellowship, I look after our 55 and older, and we do call it legacy, because we believe that you all are leaving a legacy. And in that, when we launched it, at least tell it our weekend list, we started with 0 people, did an invitation. We now, 2 years into it, we have anywhere between 60 to 80 people for a class. And they sit around the table. Virginia actually leads one of my tables. There's 8 people, and you build community. And in that, it's invaluable because, matter of fact, we have a lady who, she's 78 years old, just had a double hip replacement yesterday. And how I found out about it is through the Taylor leader contacted me and said, "Hey, Pastor Reed, this young lady's getting ready to have this procedure." So I was able to follow up, speak with the family, and said, "Hey, please keep us in the loop. Got her on our prayer team. We're praying for her. She's doing great." So yeah, it's all about building that community because we believe very strongly. Don't, and that's how this support.
And we have it too at the campus over here, but probably all of our churches have that. I think church is a great place to find that support. Virginia.
Well, I applaud you. You're here. You're doing, yeah, yes. We took the first step. Now, to be active, be part of a group. Obviously, that's one of the biggest fears, as I said earlier, to people as we age. We don't want to be alone, especially if we live alone. You know, it's very, it can be depressing. It can be scary. It can be all of these things. But if you stay active and as best you can, find rooms to be involved with so that you have someone that calls and checks on you every now and then, or, you know, we missed you at the meeting. Are you okay? So applaud you for being part of it.
Yeah, we have a nice family here, I think. I mean, I consider you my family because we talk about some pretty heavy duty things. And, I try to get you the best information. And if I don't know, I have my experts that I need. So, so this is something that, this is something that the next question is more for you, Rue. And I was just talking to someone today, when I'll pass. I mean, she lived a hard